Hi, it's Miss Mason. We will be reading Counting by Sevens by Holly Goldberg Sloan. Today we'll be reading chapters 22 to 25. Chapter 22. I want to turn off the sun and live in darkness. I wake up on top of a mattress resting on the floor of the garage across the alley from Mai's mom's nail salon, and I have no idea, for what feels like a very long time, where I am. I hope that I'm dreaming. I am not. Yesterday happened. The heavy weight of it presses down on me in a force much greater than gravity. It is crushing. I'm 12 years old and already twice without parents. If you analyze the odds of being given away at birth, and then losing another full set of legal guardians 147 months and 7 days later, I'm right on the edge of the graph, in the 1% of the 1%. I can still walk and talk and breathe, but there isn't much point. It's just something my body is doing. I'm not going back to school. You don't have to watch many wildlife documentaries to know that the herd doesn't accept the lone straggler. And with the exception of Margaret Z. Buckle, the herd never accepted me anyway, so I'm not losing much. When did middle schools eliminate weekly spelling bees? It's the only activity I would have signed up for. There is just one person who I miss now that I'm no longer a Sequoia giant. Miss Judy, the school nurse. She saw more of me than any other student, and we shared a love of germ eradication. I wish her well. I'm sitting in the back of the salon next to the storage closet. I found a furniture pad and rolled it up in such a way as to make a place for myself. I wanted to stay across the alley in the garage, which would be good because it is dark back there, but Patty insisted I be where she can see me. I wasn't going to argue. I barely know the woman. I didn't have my healthy start breakfast, and not because they have never heard of it, but because I'm still having trouble swallowing. I have a caseworker. Patty Nguyen tells me this after she hangs up the phone. I ask for paper and a pen. Two of the manicurists arrive. I barely notice them. I decide to write down my thoughts, but not my real ones. I cannot put on paper the idea that I want to scream as loud as I can until my throat ruptures, so I make a list. I try to concentrate on that. An hour later, a woman comes into the salon, but she doesn't want a manicure. She has the posture that suggests lower lumbar pain. She probably sits in a chair for too long, and has inadequate abdominal strength. I tell her, but I couldn't care less. Everyone, I now realize, lives in a world of pain, but I'm certain that mine is greater than hers. The woman with the bad back talks up front to Patty. I have no idea for how long. I'm done measuring things. I only hear parts of the conversation. Although it is about me, it doesn't matter. Nothing that they say will change the fundamental fact of my life, which is so overwhelming that I cannot give voice to it. I do hear the woman tell Patty that she's handled many of these type of cases. That doesn't seem accurate, because how many 12-year-old kids in Bakersfield actually lose both parents in one afternoon? I also hear the woman explain that the Jameson Children's Center was established by Kern County to provide children who need emergency shelter and protection a safe, warm, and nurturing environment. That can't be good. The woman does all the talking, and Patty doesn't respond. She doesn't even say, "Uh-huh," or "I understand." She is like me, silent. I admire that in a person. The ability to keep your mouth shut is usually a sign of intelligence. Introspection requires you to think and analyze. It's hard to do that when you're babbling away. Finally, Patty motions to the back, and the next thing I know, the official-looking woman leans over me and says, "My name is Lenore Cole, and I'm here to help you." I hand her a piece of paper. She looks surprised but straightens, with a small grimace, which reinforces my diagnosis of lower back pain, and reads, 1. My parents have no relatives who are appropriate to accept legal responsibility for me. 2. I do not believe that any of my parents' small circle of friends are in a position to take me into their lives. We did not belong to any church or other organization that might have support groups. 3. I do not wish to ever return for any reason to the house where I lived on Citrus Road. I would like you to call Haruto Ito, the owner of Ito's Garden Services, and tell him that our backyard garden is now his responsibility. He will understand. 4. I would like to have my computer and my printer, which are in my room. There is a large cabinet with my medical file cards. I will need these. And I would also like all of the blue notebooks, as well as my clothing, the metal box under my bed with my life savings, the orange towel in the bathroom, my humidifier, and my copy of Atlas of Human Anatomy by Frank H. Netter and Sharon Colicino. Also my TI-89 Titanium Plus graphing calculator, which is on my desk. Please be careful with it. 5. I would like all of the pictures of my parents put in storage for me for the future. 6. I would like to formally request a forensic autopsy to be performed on both my mom and dad. I will need a copy of this report, although I will not be reading it at this time. 7. I would like my DVD of the movie adaptation. It is in the cabinet under the television in the living room. 8. I will need the pictures and information pinned up to my bulletin board taken down and placed in a large envelope. Please take special care when handling the lemur photo signed by wildlife legends Beverly and Derek Joubert. 9. I would like a sedative prescribed to help me deal with anxiety. I may need medication at a later date for depression, but I would need to see extensive research on its long-term effects on teenagers. And I would also like a complex multivitamin designed specifically for juvenile use. 10. I am going to stay for now at Happy Polish Nail Salon. It is my hope that the Nguyen family will allow this and be compensated for taking care of me. 11. I have 7 library books. They will need to be returned. I have never incurred a late fee. I don't want to start now. Respectfully, Willow Chance. The woman looks stunned by the clarity of the communication. Or maybe the intense expression on her face is normal. Either way, it is a relief that she doesn't smile. For a period of time, immeasurable now that nothing can be quantified, my caseworker tries in a variety of ways to convince me to leave with her. I say nothing. And I don't move a muscle other than to take shallow, almost imperceptible breaths. I know this can be unsettling to people. I can't count anymore by sevens, but I can conjugate irregular Latin verbs, and I do this while she speaks to me. Finally, when it is obvious that none of her talking is working, the woman implies that force is an alternative. She doesn't say that she's going to drag me to her car by my hair if that's what it takes, but I get the picture. And so in the end I have no choice but to go along. I'm surprised I have as much trouble as I do saying goodbye to Patty Nguyen. She puts her arms around me tight, and I wish that she would stay that way. But of course she can't. I don't say anything, but I guess the tears running down my cheeks do the talking, because Patty abruptly turns away and goes to the back of the salon. It is the hardest goodbye I've ever had. Yesterday at this time, I didn't even know her. Chapter 23. James's Children's Center is the county facility that provides emergency foster care. Lenore Cole gives me a pamphlet. I read it, but get the distinct feeling that this place is probably for kids who have parents who hit them or don't feed them real food because they're too busy taking drugs or stealing something. As we drive up to the building, I put my index and middle fingers on my carotid artery just behind my ear to take my pulse. I know for a fact that my heart rate is in some kind of danger zone. We go inside. They're processing my paperwork. When I enter, I see that the doors have locks on both sides. They click shut. There are surveillance cameras in every room. People are watching. It is a big mistake for me to be here. All of a sudden, I have trouble breathing. I can't get air in, and I can't get air out. I take a seat on a lime and purple upholstered couch and struggle to get a grip on my lungs. Someone's left a copy of the morning edition of the Bakersfield News-Gazette on the elephant-shaped metal coffee table. A photograph takes up most of the space above the fold. The headline reads, "Fiery car crash claims 2 lives. Third person in a coma." Below the caption I see my dad's demolished pickup, in pieces and burned black, conjoined with a mangled medical truck. And then everything in my field of vision disappears. I hit my head on the elephant-shaped coffee table when I experienced syncope, or a transient loss of consciousness, more commonly known as passing out. Yes, I fainted. And when I did, the sharp edge of the pachyderm's trunk sliced right through into my glabella. Blood is suddenly everywhere because blows to the head bleed profusely. I'm in and out of consciousness, and the confusion feels good. Suddenly there are all kinds of announcements being shouted on the PA system, and then I can hear someone say I need stitches, since it's a deep cut, and it's right between my eyebrows and it will likely scar. I murmur, my glabella. But the staff doesn't know that the glabella is the name of the space between your eyebrows. I hear someone whisper, she's asking for Bella. I shut my eyes again. So many things in life are distressing. The brow of the head is formed specifically to guard against these kinds of injuries. It is bone, and like the bumper of a car, it's designed to take a blow. So this is a freak accident to faint and then collapse in such a way as to get sliced between the eyes by the surprisingly dangerous trunk of the elephant coffee table. But I did, and now there is blood. My blood. Hemoglobin is iron-containing protein that makes up 97% of every red blood cell's content when dry. But when mixed with water, which is how it courses through the human body, it is only about 35%. Hemoglobin is what binds the oxygen. Now that Jimmy and Roberta Chance are gone, what binds me to this world? They take me to Mercy Hospital because I am a 12-year-old girl, and they don't want me to have facial disfigurement. At least that's what I hear someone whisper in the hallway. The nurse at Jameson puts a bandage over the laceration and asks me to hold an icy compress on my wound, which I do. And then Lenore Cole and I get back into her car and drive together to Mercy Hospital. Twice she asks if I'm still bleeding, and I'm wondering if she's worried about her upholstery. It would look pretty messed up to be a social worker and have dried kid blood as a permanent stain in your vehicle. They didn't request an ambulance because it wasn't that kind of injury, but I wouldn't have minded riding in one. At Mercy, I sit in the waiting room of the ER, and it doesn't take much to realize that this place doesn't have double locks on the doors or surveillance cameras everywhere like at Jameson. I get 9 stitches. The old me would have asked for 7 because that's my number, but the doctor puts in 9. I don't say anything when he tells me. It now looks like I have a caterpillar between my eyes. Yet this is not the most important thing that happens after I collapse onto the now established as dangerous elephant coffee table. Because after I have a drink of water, and for the 4th time view my medical chart, I ask to use the bathroom. I tell Lenore Cole I'll be right back, and the woman believes me. I don't go down the hall to the restroom. Instead, I take an elevator up to the 3rd floor, and then walk to the other wing of the hospital, and use the back stairs to get to the cafeteria. Once I'm there, I ask a grief-stricken woman, I know the look, wearing a fuzzy green bathrobe and ski boots if I can use her cell phone. She doesn't say yes, but she doesn't say no. And after an awkward amount of time where I just stare at her, she hands me her mobile device. I dial the number for Mexicano Taxi and make a special request for Jairo Hernandez. I know his taxi license number and give that to the dispatcher. I say I want to be picked up in front of Century 21 Premier Realty on the corner of Truxton and A Street. That is 1 block from the hospital. When I hand the phone back to the woman in the bathrobe, I notice that she has a hospital band on her wrist. So she's a patient. Before everything in my life changed, I would have sat down to discuss her condition. But now I just say in a voice that sounds automated, get some rest. It is critical to recovery. And I'm gone. Chapter 24. Jairo was spooked. This girl was some kind of mystic. As she suggested, he'd been to see a doctor, and the mole on his neck had been removed that morning. He was now waiting for the report, the biopsy. But the doctor had made it clear that the ugly black hunk of skin was something bad. He hadn't told anyone at work, and he had a scarf around his neck to cover the bandage. He looked down at his right hand and realized it was shaking. Jairo shut his eyes and mouthed a prayer. He never did that, but this was serious. Even a non-believer would believe. Now, as he pulled up to the curb, he could see that she'd been in some kind of accident, because she had a line of stitches between her eyes, which were both puffy and red. It looked like she'd been doing a lot of big-time crying. He wanted to know what happened. Had someone hurt her? He felt a wave of anger roll over him. If someone did this girl wrong, they would have him to deal with. The undersized 12-year-old got into his taxi, and in a whisper of a voice said she did not have the money to pay for the fare. She asked if she could get it to him sometime later in the week, or by mail, whichever worked better for his schedule. Jairo said, yes, of course. He would take her anywhere, no charge. She wanted to go to the Beale Memorial Library. That was only a few miles away, but it was hot out, and she said she wasn't up to walking anywhere. Jairo asked if she was okay, and she only nodded and then shut her eyes. He put on his turn indicator and pulled back out into the lane. He realized he'd lived in Bakersfield for 11 years, and he'd never been inside the library. That was wrong. It was for the public, and it was filled with knowledge. Hiro understood, as he drove, that he needed to stop listening to crazy guys yell at each other on sports radio, and start thinking about something that had consequences, that were real and important. She was guiding him. He knew that now. Yes, she was his angel. As they neared her destination, Hiro glanced into the rearview mirror. The ghost, prophet, inspector, angel was gnawing at some kind of plastic strip off her wrist. A hospital band? That's what it looked like. Why was he just seeing that now? He was going to have to learn to be a better observer of all things, but most especially of his own life. When she got out of his taxi, she told him that he would hear from her. He didn't doubt that. And then as he watched, she headed into the library. In the back seat there was a small trash bag. Hiro reached inside and pulled out the plastic hospital strip. On the band was written, Willow Chance, ID number 080758-7. He would play those numbers at Lotto for the rest of his life. Chapter 25. Yes, he worked for the Bakersfield Unified School System. And, well, yes, he'd heard, or rather he knew, that there had been an accident involving the parents of one of the children he was helping. He had to concentrate, to focus. Fear had a way of scrambling his brain. What was the woman going on about? The police report said that you brought her home. Dell was grinding his teeth as his jaw slid back and forth and his tongue sucked up to the roof of his mouth, forming a kind of foamy vacuum. He was able to break it long enough to say, Yes, I'd been working with her. I'm a counselor. It's just a tragedy. And then he heard, We'd like you to come down to Jameson. You could be part of the search. It was like the sun suddenly poked through a stormy sky. Everything changed color and tone and intensity. The search? The voice now replied, She's missing. You could be helpful. There might even have been bells somewhere far away now ringing. Dell found his voice rising 2 octaves. I could? Dell left work, driving 10 blocks out of his way to pass the Chance house, where several dozen bouquets of flowers from neighbors and co-workers lay wilted from the heat on the front steps. Someone had made a homemade banner that said, Jimmy and Roberta, R.I.P. But the evening wind from the night before must have gotten hold of the sign, because now it was on the neighbor's dry front lawn. A group of burned low votive candles sat on the walkway, and a half-dozen empty beer bottles on their sides nearby. It looked, Dell thought, like the remains of a bad party. Willow Chance, according to the assembled authorities, was he part of them now? It looked like it. Had no viable relatives. But now the kid was missing. They had sent a patrol car to Happy Polish, and she wasn't there. The woman in charge was playing a version of the blame game, accusing all kinds of people of being at fault. He knew that game well, having been a finger-pointer since early childhood. When in doubt, pout, or falsely accuse someone. But one thing in the muddle of confusion was clear. He was being asked to help. He could sense his power in the room. It was a new feeling, and it made him literally dizzy. What if he could actually find the missing kid? They were focusing on foul play. Abductors who might have been caught on video cameras or other means of surveillance. But Dell knew in his heart that the 12-year-old hadn't met with any kind of foul play. It was more likely that she was assisting a doctor performing open-heart surgery than that some creep had snatched her. But he didn't show his hand. And so while Lenore huddled with other employees filing police reports and requesting interviews with hospital workers, Dell excused himself and accessed the school district website. He then drove straight to Mize High School.